In Chartres, Bernard seems answered, as the mild angel smile lights purlieus of grace, Romanesque and Gothic meet in carving and structure. But if we walk from the cathedral's 1150 layout to the last sculptures of the transept porches nearly a century later, we measure the Gothic assumption of body and person, earth and time, from columnar removal to this God meditating creation, brooding over the world and his involvement in it, so that it is sometimes called, and the doubt is expressive, the human author of the book of Genesis. If one would ask where such implied heresy of personal emergence was most startling, the answer might well be less in the stylized power of this France than in the precursive outbreaks of the chartered German towns. In the Romanesque, which we have traced there, past this 1200 St. Andrew of Halberstadt, the general awakening looks out with the directness of pre-Reformation humanity. So too in the religious and political protest poems of Walter von der Vogelweide about 1170 to 1230. In that Europe of 100 years before Dante, perhaps only St. Francis and Frederick II advance so. I sat down on a stone, left on the right leg bone, elbow piled on the knee, chin and half my cheek caught in the palm's grip. It is the pose of the Chartres God author, the same Walter would assume in the Vanessa manuscript, and centuries after Rodin's thinker, Ich saß auf einem Steine und dachte Bein mit Beine. So I pondered deep in this world how to live, but found no clue I could give how a man might gain three things, each of which the other shames, honor and worldly goods, two already at odds, a third outweighing both, God's blessing on our faith. Hard as I tried to bind the three in one, it would not stand, that wealth and earthly pride, and God's grace beside, in one heart should dwell. That worldly honor and wealth cannot be reconciled with Christ's blessing is the medieval and doctrinal ground. But the poem does not stop there. It seizes on corruption as the cause of this imperfection. Steps and ways are withheld, wrong lurks in wait, violence is loosed on the street, peace and right thrown down. As a middle Rhine illuminator endows a romance encounter of Alexander the Great with the violence of the chivalric broils sweeping the Holy Roman Empire. Untruhe ist in der Saße, Gewalt fährt auf der Straße. The poem ends, Du drü en habend geleit es nicht, du zwei en werden gesund. Literally, the three will never have safe conduct until the two are restored. Whether the two are peace and right just above, or honor and earthly good, earlier called die zwei, does not alter the meaning. That if the kingdom of man could be ordered, God's grace might dwell in it, as in whatever reform utopia Joachim's third kingdom, Dante's De Monarchia, or this Bamberg Jonah characterfully foresee. Against the dark exile of the opening, we glimpse the dawn of God's self-realization in the world. The three will never be atoned until the two are sound. Ironic that the German, Sicilianized half-Norman Hohenstaufen, who pressed furthest with the ordering of the secular, this bust a battered relic of his Apulian Rome, Frederick II, stupor mundi et immutator mirabilis, Matthew Paris, wonder of the world and miraculous transformer, should have been hounded by the papacy for all his genius and worth down into Dante's hell, a risk prefigured in the carving. For the question was always ticklish, as with Abelard and even Aquinas, or in Frederick's crusading youth, whether the vitality would be embraced or damned. It was love, most of all, Dante's seed of every virtue and punishable crime, which had to walk that sword bridge of church denial or sublimated service. How critical the span from the irrepressible fablio vanity which would grow to Chaucer's clowning lust. Through troubadour idolization, glowingly heretical, Tristan and Isolde, Paola and Francesca, to the sacred incorporation in which the smiling Gothic angels led the way for Beatrice. This Limoges enamel, as much as any work of the 1200 time, endows sensuous love with almost religious grace, though its symbolic flower forms, its longing faces, float as wistfully in the timeless as Aucassin's preference for hell, en paradis qu'ai-je à faire. It is, as he says, the old priests, the crippled and maimed, whom creed saves, while the knights and loving ladies, Dante's le donne antiche e cavalieri, proceed into hell. Let me go with these, if only I have my love, Nicolette. That church norm of ascetics praying in holy crypts can make love almost as thin a levity as the 13th century foibles of the bath-house. Yet the vernal delight declares itself, as in a lay set for minstrel's harp, en mai la Rousseille. In a time of the anagogical, one can hardly tell how far that dream of a May morning serves the sacred smile, or how much of earth's spring is enfolded in Mont Saint-Michel cloister. Such the mingling of a French motet to the Virgin, à la clarté qui tout enlumina notre grand ténébreur, to the brightness that lightens the land of our shadow, to the lady whose grace is a medicine for our sorrow, maiden and mother of healthful savour, rose of the dawn, and of women flower. This Louvre coronation in painted ivory, an ultimate of courtly love in heaven. Heavenly, too, the seduction, when that more formal French grace penetrates and lightens the moods of German heart. The 1230 Shulamite synagogue at Strasbourg, for negra sum sed formosa, blind but beautiful. In this work, mythically ascribed to a woman, what Augustine most feared, the pathos and glory of sense, brings into the church itself the passion of Eloise, the mystery of Isolde. At the same time, in the German singers of Minne, love, sacred and profane, most in Walter von der Vogelweide, the troubadour strain enters the forests of Taunus and Tyrol, absorbing a fragrance of woods and meadows, Lindenduft. Nehmt, Frue, diesen Kranz. Take this wreath from me, lady, the flowers I have, but I know where all colors blow and birds sing. Come, let us gather flowers. Blushing she came, until dawn took me from my laughing dream. And now all summer long I search the dance for eyes, if I could find her under some garland spray. Always the sweetness of love, under medieval acceptance of dream. Walter's most quoted poem is also his most smiling. We are tempted a generation forward to the queens of Naumburg by the winsome wreathing of that smile. Under the lime tree on the moor, where we made our bed together, you will find there grass and flowers broken which for love were gathered. Before the forest in a vale, Tanderadai, sweetly sang the nightingale. Unter der Linden an der Heide, da unser zweier Bette was, da möget ihr finden, schöne beide, gebrochen Blumen unter Gras. Vor dem Walder in einem Tal, Tanderadai, schöner sang du Nachtigall. In the analogies of Gothic, this revived Eden, the phallic bird, Boccaccio would also set singing there, and even the pregnant beatitude of the High Lady in the next stanza, dass ich bin selig immer mehr, hint at another love meeting of Gabriel and the Jungfrau. As a minnesinger, Walter was as much musician as poet. Though he only longed for the Holy Land, his Crusaders' hymn puts him there. Nu allerst lebe ich mir werde. Today my better life began. I have come to the very land where the one God walked as man. Ich bin kommen an die Stadt, da Gott menschlichen trat. With the old Max Miley performance, we return in art to Bamberg, to this German rider. Like Walter himself, like utopian Frederick II, before papal calumny sealed his satanic compact, this knight of the new faith seeks an incarnate city where God walks as man.
Du allererst leb ich mir werde, sieht min sündig Auge das hehre Land und auch die Erde, den man viele Ehren gibt. Mir ist geschehen, als ich bat, ich bin kommen an die Stadt. Gott menschlichen Preis.
In age, with a pension from Frederick II, Walter went home to find his playmates old, the fields burned off and the woods cut down. In his last elegy, contempt of the world becomes the vortex in which Renaissance tragedy was to form. The years of my life have vanished like a dream. O weh, war sind verschwunden allu minu Jahr. Ist mir mein Leben geträumet, oder ist es wahr? With such precursive immediacy, the 1260 kings and queens of Naumburg prepare for the realistic donneurs in the paintings of the Van Eycks. Surely the pair of Eckhart and his love-haunted wife Uta is the most oracular visualization of romance. If any Western poetry before Dante shares its sensuous intensity, it is the German courtly epics at the start of the 13th century. Gottfried of Strasbourg's lines on Isolde's dress have been compared with the synagogue figure in his own city, but they would as well serve here. The gown was formed as a part of her, and held her body like a lover. There was no place where it jutted out, but everywhere clipped her about, falling smooth from top to floor, with clinging folds behind and before, that gathered close between her feet, as much as you would wish to see it. But it is the face and fold of the ermine which match the evocation of Paul and Francesca as they read of Lancelot and Guinevere. How the desired smile was kissed by such a lover. Quando leggemmo il disiato riso esser baciato da cotanto amante. To which Wolfram von Eschenbach comes as near in his crazy way as any of those Germans, the god-made lady Yeshute, asleep naked in her tent, all love's weapons on her, flesh of ivory, a red mouth slightly parted, breathing heat of minne. Die Frau was entschlafen, sie trug der Minne Waffen, einen Mund durchlüchtig rot, der trug der Minne Hitze für. The forest-grown bumpkin Parsifal, who falls on her snow-white body only to take some symbolic ring, at which Wolfram's Eros flames to the wild and strange. Who has dishonored me? It is insupportable, youth. You might have taken a better aim. Reminder of the comic odds against which Dante would deify his love, how far human passion hung with the 6 other sins of all that is earthly over a doomsday void, one of the gargoyles grinning down from the fabric of creed, as in the old church of St. Nicholas at Blois, beasts and sinner-mouthing devils stare from the columns of the choir at the very mass where God is eaten and drunk. It is this suspension that wraps the richest Gothic love in poignance and paradox. O lasso, quanti dolci pensier, quanto disio, meno costoro al doloroso passo. How many tender thoughts, what heart's desire, has led them down into this place of sorrow. That is the vacancy of the bare 5th chord, which yawns under the liveliest music of the jongleurs. How the skirtling and warbling and plucking trail out into the wail of no claim. Attempts at the humanistic and forceful speak the same condition. The sketchbook of Villard de Honnecourt would be Leonardo of the 13th century, its exploratory studies of the nude far from acclaiming the glory of body. Or the sequence of motets from Perotin's Last Years and After, in honor of Louis, king and saint. It is in rhythmic drive and heterophonic clash that Gothic levity whirls its dance, as in the quaint miniature of the King of Minstrels at the levee of Blanche of Castile. The playing card faces gaze through a diapered mirth of color, spaceless reminders under the brightest play. One can hardly credit the leap to the panoply of Baroque joy. Cortona's Age of Silver, the celebrations of Monteverdi's Orfeo, where every chord asserts temporal validity in the pomp of musical space. Yet even here the mortal enigma, now a conscious theme, brings out of gaiety and a verse of tears. As if the complicity of major and minor were the ineradicable trace of the old timelessness. Since Bacchus too is celebrated in this Cortona fresco, let us glance at the Bacchic cult of 1300, a monkish branch of the sin of gluttony, conceived in the pleasure mode Gothic allows of gargoyle grotesque. Though from this monastic sprout comic courage would burgeon, through Langland there was laughing and lowering and let go the copper. And Skelton, she drank so of the dregs a dropsy was in her legs, to the almost Rubens affirmation of Bruegel and Rabelais. The flagons began to go, the hams to trot, the goblets to fly, the big bowls to jingle. I drink for the thirst to come, I drink everlastingly, gulp it down, it's medicine. While Gargantua, as soon as he was born, did not cry, me, me, like other children, but in a loud voice bawled, give me drink, drink, drink. From the Thomistic synthesis, all aspects of man and world would enlarge and ripen separate realms of substantial temporality. The strength of medieval unity, as in the west front of Lincoln, combining Romanesque and Gothic from the 11th century through the 13th, is its trans-rationality, that it can suspend disparities of heaven, earth, and hell in a faith structure where relationships are abstract and allegorical. What Tawney said of the economy applies to politics, theology, the arts. Medieval religious thought strains every interest and activity by however arbitrary a compression into the service of a single idea. How could it be otherwise, where the life of the age was a continual centrifugal release within creed containment, a continual absorption and canonizing of secular vitalities, bound to rend the mold in which they were formed, or replace it with another, ultimately of rational and volitional ordering? It seems in that sense the historical task of the Western arts to give measured accord to what in the Gothic synthesis had been hauntingly juxtaposed. The gaunt contention of angel and fiend, buttressing the sanctum even of Dante's energized acceptance, had in Milton and Leibniz and Hegel to be reconciled by the arrogations of dialectic, coherently justifying the ways of God to men. In music, it is consonance and dissonance which must be nobly harmonized. Their keen opposition and formal containment are the flung gauge of Gothic. The later history of harmony is their substantial reconciliation in spacious structures of tension and release. Purcell, with this wren. The principle of medieval polyphony is feudal. In Franco of Cologne's treatise, the loyalty of each part is not to a regulated whole, but to another part, either the tenor or the last part written. Varying melodies, words, languages will be crushed together. Over a church Kyrie, the triplum may warble in French of the month of May, while the middle voice in Goliard Latin discusses bigamy. Everywhere is the battering of stresses into structure. Everywhere a nominal oneness lays its sanction on radical contingency. The nihil est praeter individuum of scholastic thought, the fortune and accident of medieval romance. Such the Thomistic tercets of credo reasoning, by which Aristotle's world fabric is wrenched into Trinitarian transcendence of good and evil, with syllogistic demonstration that just such the philosopher had in mind. As John of Salisbury said, they worked to reconcile dead men who contradicted each other all their lives. While formulas of humble respect buttress magisterial willfulness, reverenter exponere, to explain with respect, pium dare intellectum, to give a dutiful meaning. Thus Thomas argues Gregory out of the repudiation of reason he shared with the early church. When Gregory says there is no merit in believing where human reason furnishes proof, he refers to a man who has no will to believe. But where he has the will, his faith is not diminished, though he have apodictic proof. So Gothic compromise shoulders out a handmaidenly space for earthly science itself, that lady who appears smiling on the north portal of Chartres. With such clairvoyance, Roger Bacon opens the vision of technocracy in the catechistic cloister. It is possible that great ships and sea-going vessels shall be made, which can be guided by one man, and will move with greater swiftness than if they were full of oarsmen. It is possible that a car shall be made, which will move with inestimable speed, and the motion will be without the help of any living creature. It is possible that a device for flying shall be made, such that a man sitting in the middle of it and turning a crank shall cause wings to beat the air, after the manner of a bird's flight. It is possible also easily to make an instrument by which a single man may violently pull 1,000 men toward him in spite of opposition.